room, my friend Joy Bayar. Sister-in-law Phyllis Fioretti. Sorry. You were saying how wonderful I was. I was raised in a brownstone belonging to my grandmother Dora, who was an emigre from Odessa, and so was my mother and my aunt, Frimo, and so when they came to New York City, their life was on the screen, on the black and white screens, and so they saw all the ladies with their curls, and in those days, you know, the 20s and 30s, they had trains. It was Kay Francis and Constance Bennett, and the richest ladies spoke up here in a very high voice. And so my mother and my Aunt Frima also spoke slightly British accent in a very high voice, because that's the way rich ladies talk. And so I did too. I didn't find out that my voice was like that until I went to the neighborhood playhouse and heard my voice on a recorder, and it was this bird voice, you know, hello. When you go into the fearsomeness of a play, opening night, an audience that likes you or doesn't like you, critics who write about you the next day, they like you or they don't like you, you form a bond with your fellow soldiers, and that's the way we all think of it. We are soldiers on the stage, and we are together, and we support each other, and in doing that, there's a bond that happens because you're doing battle of a sort. And there's a bond that happens with actors, particularly in the theater. But it also happens when you move from film to film, and you're suddenly against, loving somebody you never saw before, and you have to, make an instant connection. And so something happens in terms of protecting each other. It was almost the opposite. When I was up for the ingenue lead in Detective Story, we're talking 1950. Hello. It was like the ingenue lead, and she was so saccharine. She was so hovering around the leading guy in it, that I asked if I could read for the part of the old lady that said 40-year-old shoplifter. And so I got the part of the shoplifter, and it's a tiny part, it's not the ingenue, it's not the leading lady. And so when it got all these reviews, it was like being found out, like being, pushed out into the open, and I wasn't happy about it. I certainly learned to be afterwards, but it was like I was exposed. I thought I could go on from play to play and hide, and steal scenes instead of having to, support a play. But the Blacklist happened very accidentally. I left Detective Story to go into another play, which was written by the man who was to become my husband, Arnie Manoff. And that play was filled with refugees from LA who had been blacklisted. Actors, writers, directors, all fleeing from the House Un-American Activities Committee, who had been named by other people, who opened on Broadway with me and the cast, and one of the actors there, J. Edward Bromberg, who had been in the group theater, who was one of the founders of the group theater, he used to be sweating in the wings, and he'd say to me, the House Un-American Activities Committee has called me again. They've been told I have a bad heart. I've already testified. You know, they have to leave me alone. I don't know what's going to happen. And it was very infectious and very scary to me that this grown-up, this man was talking to, this was my second play on Broadway. You know, I was a new actress. I was so frightened, and I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know what the House Un-American Activities Committee was. And he left the country and he went to London and opened in a play there and had a heart attack and died. And so I went on to another play, and they had a huge memorial for Bromberg at the Edison Hotel. Like 2,000 people showed up. And so someone came to me and said, as a young actress who worked with him, would I like to say a few words? And so I said that I felt that he had been hounded to his death by the Un-American Activities Committee. And 2 days later, I went to an equity meeting, and an actor friend said, well, I see you've made it. And he handed me Red Channels, which is the book that has all the blacklisted people's names. And they were quoting from exactly what I said to you, that I felt he'd been hounded. And from that day, and I was 24 then, for 12 years, I could not work in film or television.
So we'll start with The Landlord.
Well, we'll start with the heat of the night.
I guess we know who the star is.
So the reason we start with the heat of the night, because that was the first movie that I was offered when I got off the Blacklist in 1964, and went to Hollywood to do Peyton Place, and Norman Jewison, great Norman Jewison, who has, you know, created so many incredible films, asked me to do this small part. And Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger were the stars of it. It was, as you all know, you can say better than I can, a groundbreaker in terms of race and in terms of the education of this this sheriff played by Rod Steiger, who won an Oscar for that performance. And it was out of that. Hal Ashby was the editor of Heat of the Night. And Norman Jewison gave him The Landlord. He produced it, Hal Ashby directed for the first time. And we shot that here in New York, and it was another breakthrough on race relations. And Hal, this was his first film, and you know, he was a genius. He also directed Shampoo. He was a great friend to me. And I loved his direction, which was surprise me. You know, what could be better than for a director to say to his actor, surprise me? What should I do to surprise me? And so it, like, you know, kicked open all the doors as far as an actor's imagination is concerned. You know, and so I surprised him and myself. But I used my mother and my aunt in The Landlord. And I can't say anymore. And Shampoo.
And Shampoo, your Oscar winner.
Yes, and Shampoo, Warren came to see me in a play I did on Broadway and asked me to do Shampoo. And he co-wrote it. He raised the money for it. I mean, was such a talented entrepreneur in putting on films, in charming everybody that he came in contact with. The studio decided not to do the film, so he met with some gangsters, talked them into it. You know, the charm was there. I just, you know, was kind of reminiscing about that time that, even that walk down the aisle to get it, you know, I felt I'd won. I felt that I had said yes to everything that came up, that I was given opportunities to say yes and to work and to work and to work, and that the reality of being a leading actress in Hollywood was closing in on me as I got older. And that was the truth, and that was reality. And that I was at peace with it. I had gone to an AFI directors, first women directors workshop, and I did Strindberg's The Stronger for my first piece, and I loved it. I loved it. And found my way through it to doing my first documentary, which was called The Wilmer 8. It was about 8 women who went on strike against their bank in Wilmer, Minnesota. And both of these experiences, like, I could talk, I could express my opinion, I could say anything I wanted through making film and through making documentaries. And it was like my way of saying to the Blacklist time, you know, fuck you. And in the last week of playing, on a Wednesday night, I went up on my notes. And I couldn't think it was a character play. There's the Walgreens. I went up. I kept saying, here's your tomato juice. I was serving him dinner at home. And Peter Falk, who was my co-star in it, did not have a strong theatrical experience. He did not know what to do either. And so he pointed to the audience. He pointed like this, you know, to me. And to me, it was like the Un-American activity all over again. I mean, I was being turned in, and I was alone on stage. I didn't know what the heck to say or what was coming next. And so we pulled down the curtain. We started after my long monologue and the thing. But the experience, I don't know how to explain it. It was it devastating. And they're all, you know, these, you know, 400 million, 200, you know, and they have to, their return has to, so it's so bank oriented. And whoever is playing the lead in them has to return twice the investment. I mean, it's about investment. The last line of this thing I wrote for Gloria was, I was married to a communist and I was married to a fascist, and neither one of them took out the garbage. I'm in love with Vanessa Redgrave. Emma Thompson, when she gets the present, and it's not the one, and she knows it, and she goes into the bedroom, when I'm talking about moments, I just watch just to see that moment that she does with it. I mean, it just kills me. You know, that's the kind of talent, you know, that, you know, I would love to work with it, but, you know, it's intimidating.
Everybody talks about FAY.
Oh, well, who remembers FAY? We all do. FAY was a short-lived sitcom that I did with Paul Witt and Marlowe's brother, and it was really great. And it was in an hour that they called at that time the family hour or something like that, and they felt it was too sophisticated for the family hour because children were watching. And so one day I went to the set, and my furniture was out on the street. Nobody had told me that the studio had canceled it, and they had booked me that night to sell the show on the Johnny Carson show. So I went over to the Johnny Carson show, and I said, I know I was, booked here, but, they've canceled the show, so I don't know what to do. And he said, why don't you come on? Anyway, talk about it. It was, such a relief to get up there and to go like this. To line across. See it. I wasn't crying on the side of the road.
But you had also worked with Peter Falk before that in 1970 in Columbo, Ransom of a Dead Man.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Ransom for a Dead Man. What did you think of that role? I thought you were superb.
I did too. I did too. That was such great fun. And I was such a villainess. And and the stuff between Peter and me and that, was, such fun to do. And I loved it. That was the first of the Columbos. Yeah, it was great.
Second.
I said the first. And the only comfort that I get is that we pitch down to the worst, the very, very worst of times, and somehow look from the 50s, which were the very, very worst of times. They came the 60s, which were the very, very best of times. And all I can do is hope that out of this cataclysm of the world that we live in today, that somehow, because we have children coming after us, that our children will live in an up world and not in one in which there's so much more. That's all we can hope for.
Not listing other people. I admire you for not listing other people on that list.
No chance of that. No chance. That's why I have a problem with names.